There is a study that psychology quietly tried to bury. It was published in 2016, then replicated in 2018, then confirmed again in 2020. And every time the results came back, they said the same disturbing thing. The people who scored highest on the Dark Triad, narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy, were rated as more attractive than everyone else. Not slightly more, measurably more. By strangers, by potential romantic partners, in photographs, in videos, in real-life interactions. Even when observers were told about the personality of the person they were rating, even when they knew the person was manipulative, cold, and dangerous, the attraction did not fully go away. This is not a story about bad people fooling good people. This is a story about something much darker. Because what the research revealed is that we, as a species, are not simply tricked by these individuals. On some level, we are drawn to them. And by the end of this video, you will understand exactly why. Let's start with the fact that most people cannot accept. The Dark Triad is not a bug in human attraction. It is a feature. For decades, psychologists assumed that dark personality traits were evolutionary mistakes, errors in the code, behavioral defects that survived only because natural selection had not yet weeded them out. But that theory could not explain something obvious. If narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy were evolutionary defects, they should have decreased across generations. They should be rare. They should be dying out. They are not. The prevalence of Dark Triad traits has remained remarkably stable across cultures, across centuries, across every population ever studied. In some environments, these traits are actually rising. Evolution is not making a mistake. Evolution is doing something on purpose. And the reason these traits have persisted, the reason they have not been selected out of the gene pool, is because they work. Not for the tribe, not for society, not for the people around them, for the individual carrying them. Specifically, in the domain that matters most to evolution. Mating. Here is the uncomfortable truth that researchers keep uncovering. Across studies in psychology, biology, and behavioral economics, Dark Triad personalities consistently outperform others in short-term mating success. They have more romantic partners. They have more sexual partners. They enter relationships faster. They exit relationships faster. They successfully attract high-value mates, often people who consciously believe they would never choose someone like this. Evolutionarily, this is not incidental. This is the entire reason the traits exist. Because in the ancient environment we evolved in, the individual who could seduce quickly, extract resources efficiently, and move on before consequences arrived, had a reproductive advantage. The person who was too honest was outmatched. The person who was too loyal was left behind. The person who felt too much guilt hesitated at the wrong moment. Meanwhile, the Dark Triad ancestor, the one who could deceive with a straight face, feel no shame at abandonment, and move on to the next opportunity without emotional debt, spread their genes across more partners, in more places, more efficiently. Their descendants are us. Not all of us, but enough of us that these traits are baked into the collective genome of every population on Earth. This is not a comfortable story. But comfort is not the point. Understanding is. Now let me show you exactly what makes them attractive. Because the mechanisms are specific, and once you see them, you cannot unsee them. The first mechanism is confidence. Dark Triad personalities, particularly those high in narcissism and psychopathy, display a form of confidence that most people cannot fake. Not confidence in what they can do, confidence in who they are. This is because normal people evaluate themselves constantly. We compare ourselves to others. We worry about how we come across. We adjust our behavior based on feedback. This self-monitoring, while healthy, creates a subtle current of hesitation in almost every interaction. Dark Triad personalities do not do this. Their self-image is not based on accurate self-assessment. It is based on a constructed internal reality that ignores negative feedback and amplifies positive feedback. The result is a stability of self-presentation that most people find magnetic. They walk into rooms without wondering how they are being perceived. They speak without softening their words. They approach without asking permission. They pursue without fear of rejection. And this confidence, even when it is entirely unearned, triggers something ancient in the observer. Because in our evolutionary past, confidence was correlated with capability. The person who moved like they owned the room usually did own the room. The person who spoke without hesitation was usually worth listening to. We are still running that ancient software. But the software cannot distinguish between real confidence and performed confidence. And the Dark Triad personality performs confidence better than anyone else on Earth. The second mechanism is strategic grooming. Studies have consistently found that Dark Triad individuals invest significantly more effort in their appearance than the average person. Not because they care about beauty, because they care about impact. Their clothing is more deliberate. Their grooming is more polished. Their physical presentation is more calibrated to signal status, sexuality, and desirability. This is not vanity, it is strategy. A person who views other humans as targets, as opportunities, as puzzles to be solved, approaches their own body the same way, as a weapon to be sharpened. Every detail of the presentation is engineered to trigger attraction in the observer. And it works, because attraction at the level of first impressions is largely visual and behavioral. The polished exterior, combined with the confidence I described earlier, creates a first impression package that most people simply cannot compete with. Researchers have found that when the Dark Triad person is stripped of their grooming, presented in a plain state without their carefully constructed exterior, the attractiveness gap closes significantly. Their beauty is not in their genes. It is in their preparation. They understand that in the first 30 seconds of a first meeting, aesthetics are almost everything, and they exploit this ruthlessly. Most healthy people show up as themselves. The Dark Triad person shows up as a curated version of themselves, designed specifically to hit your evolutionary triggers. Guess who wins that first 30 seconds? The third mechanism is the most disturbing of all. They approach without fear. This is the single greatest romantic advantage a Dark Triad personality has, and it goes almost entirely unspoken in the research literature. Most people, when meeting a potential romantic partner, experience some level of social fear, anxiety about rejection, fear of embarrassment, worry about saying the wrong thing. This fear is not weakness. It is empathy in action. It is the awareness that the other person is a full human being with their own perceptions, judgments, and internal life. Dark Triad personalities, particularly those high in psychopathy, do not experience this fear. Their amygdala, the brain's fear center, is measurably less active. Rejection does not sting them the way it stings you. Embarrassment does not paralyze them. The social risk of approach is not perceived as risk at all. They walk up, they initiate, they pursue, they escalate, without the psychological drag that slows down the rest of us. And this creates an enormous asymmetric advantage in early romantic dynamics. For every 10 opportunities a healthy person might see and not act on because of fear, a Dark Triad personality acts on all 10. The math is brutal. More attempts equals more successes. More approaches equals more relationships. More escalation equals more intimacy. But there is a deeper layer to this. Fearlessness is not just about opportunity, it is about presentation. Because when someone approaches you without any visible anxiety, when they hold eye contact without flinching, when they speak without hedging, when they move toward you as if success were already guaranteed. Your nervous system reads this as high status. High-status individuals, in every social species, act as if they belong, as if they cannot be rejected, as if the world is already theirs. The Dark Triad personality mimics this exact energy, not by earning it, but by being neurologically incapable of the fear that produces the opposite. They are not confident because they are worthy. They are confident because they cannot feel the reasons to be otherwise. And your brain cannot tell the difference. Now, if you have made it this far, you already understand more about human attraction than most people ever will. But the most important part of this video is coming next. Because I have shown you what makes Dark Triad individuals initially attractive, now I need to show you why the attraction does not die when you learn the truth. Why victims of Dark Triad personalities often report that the sexual chemistry was the most intense of their lives. Why people who intellectually know the person is dangerous still find themselves drawn back. Why the pattern repeats, even in individuals who swore they would never fall for it again. Because the initial attraction is only half the story. The other half is a chemical trap. And once you understand this trap, you will understand why leaving a Dark Triad partner is harder than leaving almost any other kind of relationship. Here is what neuroscience has revealed about relationships with Dark Triad personalities. The chemistry of the bond is different from ordinary chemistry, fundamentally different. In a healthy relationship, the brain releases oxytocin and vasopressin in stable, predictable patterns. These are the bonding chemicals. They create warmth, trust, and long-term attachment. The feeling is best described as safe closeness. In a Dark Triad relationship, the brain releases the same chemicals, but layered on top of a dopamine addiction cycle created by intermittent reinforcement. I covered intermittent reinforcement in an earlier video, but here is the core idea. When rewards are given unpredictably, the brain becomes addicted to the uncertainty itself. Every warm moment feels euphoric. Every cold moment feels devastating. The highs and lows create a chemical roller coaster. Now combine this roller coaster with the initial confidence, presentation, and fearlessness we already discussed. What you end up with is not love. You end up with an experience that feels like the most intense connection you have ever had, because your brain is literally cycling through elevated states of dopamine, oxytocin, and cortisol simultaneously. Cortisol is the stress hormone. And here is the disturbing part. Stress and passion at the neurological level feel almost identical. Your heart racing, your palms sweating, your mind consumed by thoughts of the other person, your inability to focus on anything else. You interpret this as being in love. But some of it is not love. Some of it is your body responding to a threat. The Dark Triad relationship trains your nervous system to associate danger with desire. And once that association is wired in, you cannot easily undo it. Even after leaving, even after healing, even after years. The next person who is safe, who is stable, kind, and consistent will feel boring, flat, underwhelming. Not because they are, but because your nervous system has been recalibrated to interpret peace as absence. This is the deepest cost of a Dark Triad relationship, not what they took from you during, what they rewired inside you for after. Now let me address something the research keeps returning to, something that makes even seasoned psychologists uncomfortable. The Dark Triad person is often not just attractive to the average person. They are especially attractive to accomplished people, high-achieving professionals, successful entrepreneurs, emotionally intelligent people, people who by every external metric should know better. Why? Because the Dark Triad personality does something specific to high achievers that no one else can do. They see them. Or more precisely, they see the parts of the high achiever that no one else in their life is allowed to see. The exhaustion behind the success, the insecurity behind the confidence, the unmet need behind the achievements, the child still hidden inside the adult who never got quite enough of what they needed. Because the Dark Triad personality is a master of reading emotional undercurrents, remember from the last video, their cognitive empathy is often exceptional. They can perceive these hidden layers with a precision that even the achiever's closest friends cannot match. And then they reflect back exactly what the achiever needed to hear. That they are seen, that they are worthy, that someone finally understands the burden they carry. For a high achiever who has spent decades being valued for their output rather than their essence, this feels like being loved for the first time. And they will burn everything down to keep that feeling. This is why so many powerful, brilliant, capable people end up in relationships that from the outside look inexplicable. They were not choosing the Dark Triad partner. They were choosing the feeling of finally being witnessed. And the Dark Triad person was the only one offering it, because the Dark Triad person was the only one who had studied them closely enough to know how. The tragic irony is that the witnessing itself was real. The Dark Triad person really did see them. They just chose to use the site as a leash rather than as a gift. So what do you do with all of this? How do you protect yourself against an attraction dynamic that is wired into the deepest layers of human evolution, chemistry, and psychology? The answer is not to become suspicious of attraction. Attraction is not the enemy. Attraction is essential to being alive. The answer is to become suspicious of a specific quality of attraction. Intense, immediate, and destabilizing. Healthy attraction to a healthy person tends to be strong, but stable. There is chemistry, there is desire, but there is also a groundedness underneath it. You can think clearly, you can eat, you can sleep. Your friends still recognize you. Dark Triad attraction feels different, intoxicating, consuming, slightly unhinged. You lose your appetite, you cannot focus. Your thoughts loop obsessively around them. The world feels dimmer when they are not there. Poets have romanticized this state for centuries. Songs have celebrated it. Movies have taught us that this is what real love feels like. But the research is now very clear. This is not love. This is a neurochemical distortion, usually created by intermittent reinforcement, engineered intensity, and the specific cocktail of confidence, presentation, and fearlessness that the Dark Triad personality specializes in producing. Real love does not feel like drowning. Real love feels like being able to breathe more easily. If you consistently find yourself drawn to people who make you feel like you are losing your mind, that is not a personality quirk. That is a nervous system trained by earlier experiences to interpret chaos as connection. And it can be untrained, not by trying harder to pick better people, but by learning to be attracted to peace. This is one of the hardest transitions a human being can make, because for many people, peace has never been erotic. Peace has always meant boredom. Absence of drama has always meant absence of love. But the day you begin to feel electricity in the presence of someone who is simply, quietly, consistently good to you, is the day you have escaped the trap. Not because you learned to spot the bad ones, because you learned to want the good ones. Let me leave you with one final truth. The reason the research on Dark Triad attractiveness disturbs psychologists is not because it reveals something about them. It reveals something about us. It shows that our species, for all our civilization, all our morality, all our intelligence, is still running attraction software written millions of years ago in an environment where the ruthless outcompeted the kind, where the fearless outbred the fearful, where the manipulator often left more descendants than the honest lover. That software is still inside you, which means every human being has some instinct somewhere deep that responds to Dark Triad signals. This is not shameful. This is not a flaw in you. It is a feature of being a member of an evolved species with an ancient nervous system. But awareness of the software allows you to override it. You can choose. You can pause. You can question. You can slow down. You can ask yourself, over and over, the single most important question in modern romantic life. Does this person calm my nervous system, or does this person light it on fire in a way I cannot control? If the answer is the second one, no matter how magnetic they are, no matter how much your body says yes, no matter how convincing your desire feels, walk slowly. Walk very slowly. Because the fastest fires burn the whole house down, and you have to live in the house. If this video showed you something you had never seen before, hit the like button. It genuinely helps this channel reach the people who need this message most. Subscribe if you want more content that pulls back the curtain on the psychology of attraction, power, and human behavior. And in the comments below, I want to know, have you ever been drawn to someone you knew, deep down, was dangerous? What was the pull that made it so hard to walk away? In my next video, I'm going to reveal why Dark Triad personalities dominate the modern workplace, why 4% of CEOs are clinical psychopaths, why your smartest, most ethical coworkers keep getting passed over for promotion, and how corporate structures don't just tolerate these individuals, they actively select for them. You do not want to miss it. Until then, stay awake, stay aware. And remember, the fire that consumes you is not the same as the light that keeps you warm. Learn the difference. Your whole life depends on it.